20 years had passed since Earth died, and Jake Morrison was no longer the young pilot who had first flown between the stars. His hair was gray now, his face lined with age and sorrow, but his eyes still burned with the fire of purpose that had kept him alive all these years. The USS Liberty hung in the shadow of an asteroid in the outer spiral, far from Confederation space. The ship had been rebuilt and modified so many times that little of the original remained. It was more a mobile broadcasting station now than a warship, bristling with quantum communication arrays that could reach every corner of the galaxy. Jake stood on the bridge and watched the news feeds streaming in from dozens of alien worlds. The galaxy was burning with revolution, and it had all started with humanity's final message. Another system has declared independence, Ben reported from his station. His red hair was mostly gone now, and his freckled face was thin from years of running and hiding. The Thresh Collective just announced they are joining the rebellion against the Confederation. Lisa looked up from her pilot's station, where she was planning their next escape route. Her blonde hair was silver now, tied back in the same bun she had worn as a young woman. That makes 37 systems in open revolt. The Confederation is falling apart. Carol emerged from what had once been the medical bay and was now their archive center. She had spent 2 decades documenting every crime the Confederation had committed, every species they had destroyed or suppressed. Her gentle hands now carried the weight of galactic history. "The Kalarians want to meet with us," she announced. "They are forming something called the Galactic Truth Commission. They want Jake to testify." Jake nodded slowly. He had known this day would come. For 20 years, they had been broadcasting humanity's story to every species they could reach. The response had been beyond anything they had imagined. The Kalarian Republic had been the first to believe them. They had secretly investigated the human claims and found evidence of Confederation deception in their own space. That evidence had led them to contact other species, sharing what they had learned. The truth had spread like fire through dry grass. Species after species realized they had been lied to for centuries. The Zephyrians had told each race they were unique, special, the only ones ready for galactic civilization. In reality, dozens of species had been kept apart and controlled. "Where do they want to meet?" Jake asked. "Kalarian Prime. They say they can guarantee our safety." Carol hesitated. "Jake, Commander Vextal will be there too. He was captured 3 months ago when his fleet surrendered." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. Vextal, the alien who had given the order to destroy Earth. The monster who had murdered billions of innocent people because they had dared to reach for the stars. Jake had dreamed of facing that creature for 20 years. "Set course for Kalarian Prime," he ordered. The journey took 2 weeks, traveling through systems that were free for the first time in millennia. Everywhere they went, Jake could see the changes their broadcasts had caused. Alien species that had been isolated for centuries were now meeting and talking and learning from each other. When they arrived at Kalarian Prime, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The planet's orbit was crowded with ships from dozens of different species. Kalarians with their blue skin and tentacled heads worked alongside insectoid thresh and crystal-based beings whose names Jake still could not pronounce. They were all there for the same reason, to see justice done and to make sure the galaxy never forgot what the Confederation had done. The Truth Commission met in a vast hall that had been hastily built to accommodate representatives from 43 different species. Jake walked into that hall feeling very small and very human. He was the only member of his species left alive, the sole survivor of a world that existed now only in memory. The Kalarian Chancellor, a being named Veltar, stood to address the assembly. His blue skin was covered in the ritual scars that marked him as a leader, and his large eyes held both sadness and determination. "We gather today to hear testimony about the greatest crime in galactic history," Veltar said in the musical language that the translators turned into perfect English. The systematic suppression and destruction of sapient species by the Zephyrian Confederation. Jake looked across the hall and saw Vextal sitting in a special prisoner's dock. The Zephyrian commander looked older and smaller than Jake remembered. His 4 eyes stared straight ahead, showing no emotion as the charges against him were read. When it was time for Jake to testify, he walked slowly to the witness platform. The hall fell completely silent as he prepared to speak. He thought of Tony, dying in the engine room to save their lives. He thought of Captain Smith, who had died in the first seconds of the battle. He thought of Earth, beautiful and blue and gone forever. "My name is Jake Morrison," he began. "I am the last human being alive." For the next 4 hours, Jake told humanity's story. He spoke of Earth's blue oceans and green forests. He described the joy his people had felt when they first reached for the stars. He explained how they had tried to explore peacefully, seeking only knowledge and friendship. Then he told them how it had all ended. The attack without warning, the systematic destruction of every human city, the genocide of an entire species for the crime of being too curious and too brave. "The Zephyrians did not kill us because we were evil," Jake said, his voice breaking with emotion. "They killed us because we reminded them of what they used to be. We were young and hopeful and unafraid. They could not bear to see another species succeed where they had become stagnant and cruel." When Jake finished speaking, the hall remained silent for a long moment. Then Veltar stood and asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Commander Vextal, you have heard this testimony. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Vextal rose slowly, his 4 eyes finally meeting Jake's across the hall. When he spoke, his voice was tired and defeated. "The human speaks the truth. We destroyed his species because they advanced too quickly. We told ourselves it was necessary for galactic stability. We convinced ourselves we were preventing a war." He paused and looked around the hall at all the species he had helped suppress. "We were wrong. We were monsters. I was a monster." The trial continued for 3 more days, but everyone knew the outcome. Vextal was sentenced to life imprisonment, along with the other Confederation leaders who had been captured. More importantly, the Truth Commission announced the formation of a new galactic government based on cooperation instead of control. On the last day of the proceedings, Jake stood before the assembly one final time. He was old now, tired in ways that went deeper than his bones. But he had one more thing to say. "My people are gone," he told the gathered representatives. "Earth is dead. Nothing can bring them back. But their dream of peaceful exploration among the stars can live on in all of you. Do not let fear and hatred destroy what we could achieve together." The hall erupted in what the translators called applause, though it sounded different from each species. Jake smiled and felt Tony's presence beside him, and Captain Smith's and all the others who had died defending their world. Years later, when Jake finally died peacefully on a Calarian medical station, his last words became the motto of the new Galactic Alliance. They were carved in stone monuments on 100 worlds, translated into 1,000 languages, but always carrying the same message of hope. We may be gone, but our dream lives on in all of you. And in the empty space where Earth had once spun, around its yellow star, the Alliance built a memorial that could be seen from every corner of the galaxy. It bore a simple inscription in the ancient human language called English. Here lived humanity. They reached for the stars with open hands and peaceful hearts. Remember them and do better. The USS Liberty drifted through empty space like a ghost ship, its hull scarred and its crew broken. 3 weeks had passed since Earth died, and Jake Morrison felt like he was living in a nightmare that would never end. He sat in the captain's chair, staring at stars that no longer looked beautiful. Every point of light reminded him of the fires that had consumed his home world. Behind him, Lisa worked quietly at the navigation station while Ben monitored communication frequencies that carried only silence. "How are the repairs coming?" Jake asked without turning around. "Slowly," Lisa replied. Her voice was flat and tired. "We have enough power for basic systems, but the quantum drive is damaged. Tony did what he could before." She stopped talking and went back to her work. Jake closed his eyes and tried not to think about Tony's last moments in the engine room. The big engineer had saved their lives, but the cost felt too high. Everything felt too high now. Carol Watson emerged from the medical bay, carrying a cup of coffee that smelled like burnt plastic. She was a small woman with dark hair and gentle hands that had tried to save too many people during the battle. Her eyes held the same hollow look they all shared now. "Ben needs to eat something," she said quietly. "He has not left his station. In 2 days." Jake looked at their communications officer. Ben was hunched over his console, listening to radio signals from across the galaxy with desperate hope. He was searching for other human voices that would never come. "Ben," Jake called softly, "take a break." "I can hear them sometimes," Ben said without looking up. "Voices that sound human, but when I clean up the signal, it is always something else. Always aliens." Carol placed a gentle hand on Ben's shoulder. "You need rest. We all do." "Rest?" Ben laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How do we rest when we are the only ones left? How do we sleep when Earth is gone?" Jake stood up and walked to the main window. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, uncaring about the death of one small world. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrians were probably celebrating their victory. Somewhere else, other alien races lived their lives without knowing what had happened to humanity. "We need to decide what we do next," Jake said finally. Lisa looked up from her repairs. "What choices do we have? We are 4 people in a broken ship with nowhere to go." "We could try to find other human survivors," Carol suggested. "Maybe some of our deep space exploration ships escaped." Ben shook his head. "I have been monitoring all human frequencies for weeks. Nothing. We are alone." Jake pulled out the data pad that contained everything they had stolen from the Zephyrian station. For days, he had been reading through the alien files, learning about the Confederation and their history of controlling younger races. "There is something else we can do," he said slowly. "We can tell the galaxy what really happened." "Who would listen?" Lisa asked. "Who would care about one dead planet?" Jake activated the data pad and displayed the information they had downloaded. According to these files, the Zephyrians have been doing this for thousands of years. They call it development control. Any race that advances too fast gets destroyed or pushed back to primitive levels. Carol sat down and read over the files. Her medical training helped her understand the cold statistics better than the others. They have records of 47 interventions over 3 millennia. "Jake, this is genocide on a massive scale." "But they make sure no one knows about it," Ben added, finally turning away from his radio. "Each race thinks they are alone when it happens. No witnesses, no evidence, no justice." Jake felt something stir in his chest for the first time since Earth died. It was not hope exactly, but something close to it. Purpose, maybe. "That is where we are different. We escaped. We have evidence. We can be witnesses." Lisa looked skeptical. "Witnesses to who?" "The Zephyrians control most of the galaxy." Jake smiled for the first time in weeks, though it was a cold and bitter expression. "Not all of it. Look at these files more carefully. There are dozens of other alien races out there. The Zephyrians keep them separated and isolated, but they exist." Ben leaned forward, suddenly interested. "You want to contact them?" "More than that. I want to tell them the truth about the Confederation. Show them what the Zephyrians really are." Jake stood up and began pacing the small bridge. "Our quantum communication technology works on frequencies the Zephyrians cannot monitor. We can send messages they will never detect." Carol was quiet. for a long moment. "Jake, this is dangerous. If the Zephyrians find us—" "They already killed our entire species," Jake replied. "What more can they do to us?" Over the next few days, the crew of the Liberty worked together for the first time since the battle. Ben used his communication skills to modify their quantum transmitter for long-range broadcasting. Lisa plotted courses that would take them to empty regions of space where they could transmit without being detected. Carol helped Jake organize the evidence they had gathered into a clear message. The message they created was simple but powerful. It told the story of humanity in basic terms that any intelligent species could understand. It described Earth as a peaceful world reaching for the stars. It showed how the Zephyrians had destroyed billions of innocent people simply for developing technology too quickly. Most importantly, it included the stolen Confederation files that proved this was not an isolated incident. The evidence showed a pattern of control and destruction that stretched back millennia. "We should test the transmission," Ben suggested. "Send it to one system first and see if anyone responds." Jake looked at the star charts, searching for a good target. "Here, the Kalarian Republic. According to the Zephyrian files, they are an advanced race that the Confederation has been monitoring for centuries. They sent their message into the void and waited. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then Ben picked up a response that made him shout with excitement. "They answered! The Kalarians answered!" The alien response was in a language none of them could read, but the universal translator software from the Zephyrian station worked perfectly. The message was short and shocked. "Your species cannot be extinct. Our sensors show no disturbance. In your solar system, please confirm your identity and location." Jake realized the Zephyrians had hidden their crime perfectly. To outside observers, Earth looked normal. The Confederation had probably placed fake signals around the solar system to maintain the illusion that humanity still existed. "Send them." "Everything," Jake ordered. "All our evidence, all our records. Let them see the truth." The second Kalarian response came faster and carried a tone of growing anger. "We have received your evidence. We are investigating your claims. If this is true, it changes everything we know about the Confederation. Other species are being contacted. Stand by for further communication." Jake felt tears running down his face, but they were not tears of sadness. For the first time since Earth died, he felt something that might have been hope. "Carol was right," he said quietly. "This is dangerous. Once we start this, the Zephyrians will hunt us until we are dead." Lisa checked their ship's systems and nodded. "The repairs are almost finished. We can stay mobile, keep moving, keep broadcasting." Ben was already working on their next transmission. "There are 17 other species in the Confederation database. That might listen to us. We can reach them all." Carol smiled, and it was the first real smile Jake had seen from her since the battle. Tony would be proud. "We are going to make them pay." Jake looked out at the stars again, but now they did not look cold and distant. They looked like destinations, like places where other species lived and waited for the truth. Somewhere out there, justice was possible. "Let's wake up the galaxy," he said. The USS Liberty burst out of quantum space near Earth with alarms screaming across every system. Jake's hands flew over his controls as he tried to contact home base while Lisa fought to keep their damaged ship stable. "Colorado base, this is Liberty! Emergency broadcast! We have incoming hostiles!" Jake shouted into his radio. General Davis's voice crackled back through the static. "Liberty, we read you. What is your status?" "We made contact with aliens called Zephyrians. They are coming to Earth with warships. How long until they arrive?" There was a pause that lasted forever. Then Ben looked up from his scanner station, his face white with terror. "Jake, I am picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. 50 ships, maybe more." Jake felt his blood turn to ice. "General, they are already here." The main screen lit up with the sight that would haunt Jake for the rest of his life. Sleek alien warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their silver hulls gleaming like knives in the sunlight. They moved with deadly purpose toward the blue and green world that had been humanity's home for millions of years. All Earth defense ships, this is General Davis. Launch immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Across Earth, 12 ships like the Liberty powered up their quantum drives and launched into space. It was humanity's entire deep space fleet, built in secret over 5 years. 12 ships against 50 alien warships. Captain Bill Smith's voice came over the radio from the lead ship, USS Freedom. All ships, form up on me. We make our stand here. Jake watched the Earth fleet move into position between the aliens and their homeworld. The human ships looked like toys compared to the massive Zephyrian vessels, but they were all Earth had. Commander Vextal stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the primitive human fleet with cold satisfaction. 12 small ships against the might of the Confederation. This would be over quickly. Open a channel. To the human vessels, he ordered. Captain Smith's face appeared on Vextal's screen. The human looked young and determined, with brown hair and steady eyes that showed no fear. "Human Commander," Vextal said in perfect English, "you will surrender immediately. Your species has violated Confederation space and stolen classified information. The penalty is extinction." Smith's expression never changed. "This is our home. We will not surrender it." Vextal almost felt sorry for the brave little creatures. "Then you will die defending it. All ships, open fire." The space between Earth and the alien fleet erupted in beams of green energy and return fire from human weapons. The first exchange of shots lit up the darkness like a deadly fireworks show. The USS Freedom took 3 direct hits and exploded in a ball of fire that Jake could see from 50 miles away. Captain Smith died in the first seconds of the battle, along with his crew of 30 brave men and women. "Smith is down!" someone screamed over the radio. "Freedom is gone!" Jake found himself in command of the human fleet by default. He was the senior officer left alive. "All ships, scatter and attack. Do not let them get a clear shot at Earth." The battle became a desperate dance of death. The human ships were faster and harder to hit, but the alien weapons were devastating. Each time a Zephyrian beam found its target, another Earth ship died. Tony worked frantically at his engineering station, rerouting power and keeping their ship running as green energy blasts flashed past their windows. "Shields at 40%! I cannot take much more of this!" Lisa threw the ship into impossible turns and rolls, using every trick she had learned. In 20 years of flying. "Jake, we need to do something. We are getting cut to pieces out here." On the surface of Earth, people looked up at the lights in the sky and knew their world was ending. In the Cheyenne Mountain facility, Colonel Amy Johnson coordinated the desperate ground defense as alien ships began their bombing runs. "All surface-to-air missile batteries, target the incoming bombers," she ordered. "Make every shot count." The first alien bombs fell on New York City. The massive explosions vaporized millions of people in seconds, leaving only a crater where the greatest city on Earth had stood. London, Tokyo, and Moscow followed within minutes. Jake watched his homeworld burn and felt something break inside, his chest. The blue oceans were turning gray with ash and smoke. The white clouds were replaced by pillars of fire reaching toward space. "We cannot stop them," Ben said quietly. "There are too many." Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Lisa was crying as she flew, tears streaming down her cheeks. Tony's hands shook as he worked. Ben had stopped monitoring communications because there was no one left to talk to. "Sir, we have to go," Tony said. "The reactor is failing. We need to jump to quantum space now or we never will." Jake stared at the main screen where Earth continued to die under alien bombardment. Every instinct told him to stay and fight, but his duty was to his crew and to the future of humanity. "Set course for deep space," he ordered. "Jake, no!" Lisa protested. "We cannot leave!" "We are the only ones left who know what happened here," Jake said, his voice breaking. "If we die, the truth dies with us." As the USS Liberty prepared to jump, Tony suddenly stood up from his station. "Warning! Reactor core breach! Someone needs to go down there and fix it manually." Jake started to get up, but Tony pushed him back into his chair. "No, sir, you need to survive this. You are the only one who can tell our story." Tony ran toward the engine room as radiation alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Jake tried to follow, but the blast doors sealed automatically. Through the thick window, he could see Tony working with his bare hands on the glowing reactor core. "Tony, get out of there!" Jake shouted. Tony looked back and smiled. His face was already showing the effects of deadly radiation. "Tell them what they did to our world, Jake! Make them pay!" The reactor stabilized, just as Tony collapsed. The quantum drive came online, ready for emergency jump. Through the engine room window, Jake watched his friend die, saving their lives. "Jump coordinates locked," Ben announced, his voice hollow. Jake took one last look at Earth. The beautiful blue world of his birth was now a smoking ruin covered in radioactive clouds. The Zephyrian fleet hung in orbit like vultures, finishing their work of genocide. "Engage quantum drive," Jake whispered. The USS Liberty vanished from human space, carrying the last witnesses to humanity's destruction into the cold darkness between stars. Behind them, Earth died alone, its children scattered to the void. In the silence that followed, Jake made a promise to his dead friend and his dead world. Somehow, somewhere, he would make the galaxy know what the Zephyrians had done. Humanity would have justice even if no humans were left to see it. The USS Liberty dropped out of quantum space near Kepler 442 with a flash of blue light. Jake felt his stomach settle as the ship returned to normal physics. Through the main window, he could see 3 planets orbiting a red star smaller than Earth's sun. "Scan complete," Ben announced from his station. "I am picking up artificial structures on the second planet. Looks like some kind of space station." Jake leaned forward in his captain's chair. "Any signs of life?" "Negative. The station appears to be abandoned. No power signatures, no radio signals." Lisa turned to face Jake. "Should we take a closer look?" Jake thought for a moment. Their orders were to observe and report, but an abandoned alien station was exactly the kind of intelligence Earth needed. "Take us in slow, full sensor sweep. If anything moves, we run." The Liberty moved toward the station like a hunting cat. Tony kept the quantum drive ready for emergency jump, while Ben monitored all frequencies for any sign of activity. The station grew larger on their screen, revealing a massive structure of metal and crystal that sparkled in the red star's light. "My God," Lisa whispered. "Look at the size of that thing. It must be 20 miles across." The station was beautiful in an alien way. Curved towers spiraled up from a central hub, connected by bridges that looked too delicate to be real. Strange symbols covered the hull, glowing faintly with their own light. "I am detecting docking ports," Tony reported. "The station is designed for ships much larger than ours, but we should be able to connect to the smaller bays." Jake made his decision. "Take us in. We need to see what is inside." The Liberty docked with a soft bump against the alien station. Jake could hear the mechanical sounds of their ship connecting to the foreign airlock. For a moment, nobody spoke. They were the first humans to board an alien vessel. "Atmosphere is breathable," Ben announced. "Gravity is about 80%. Of Earth normal. Temperature is cool but comfortable." Jake stood up and checked his sidearm. "Lisa, stay with the ship. Keep engines warm. Tony, Ben, you are with me. Full environmental suits, just in case." The 3 men put on their spacesuits and opened the airlock. The alien corridor beyond was dimly lit by strips of blue light along the walls. The ceiling was higher than human ships needed, and the floor had a strange texture that felt soft under their boots. "This place gives me the creeps," Tony muttered. They moved deeper into the station, following corridor maps that Ben downloaded from their ship's computer. The station was clearly abandoned, but recently, dust had not settled on the surfaces, and some computer screens still glowed with alien text. "Here," Ben called from a side room. "This looks like a control center." The room was filled with curved desks and floating displays. Ben approached one of the larger screens and pulled out a device Dr. Park had given him. "Universal Translator is working. This appears to be a database terminal." Jake watched the door while Ben worked. Something felt wrong about this place. It was too quiet, too clean, like the owners had left in a hurry. "Got it," Ben said suddenly. "I am downloading their files now. This station belongs to something called the Zephyrian Confederation. They have been watching our solar system for years." "What kind of watching?" Jake asked. Ben's face went pale behind his helmet. "The bad kind. They classify Earth as a primitive world under monitoring protocols. They have sensors all through our system," Tony cursed in Spanish. "They know about us?" "Not about our technology," Ben replied, still reading the alien data. "They think we are still using chemical rockets and radio. But Jake, there is more. This is not just a monitoring station. It is an outpost for something they call development control." Jake felt ice form in his stomach. "What does that mean?" "They stop younger races from getting too advanced too fast. If a species develops faster than expected, they intervene." Ben looked up from the screen. "Jake, they have done this before. Dozens of times. The alarm that started blaring made all three men jump. Red lights began flashing along the corridors, and alien voices echoed from hidden speakers. "What did you do?" Tony shouted over the noise. "Nothing. The download must have triggered some kind of automatic distress beacon." Jake grabbed Ben's arm. "How long until the download is complete?" 30 seconds. The sound of approaching ships rumbled through the station's hull. Jake ran to a window and saw 3 alien vessels dropping out of hyperspace, their hulls gleaming silver in the red. Stars light. 20 seconds, Ben called. Jake watched the alien ships turn toward the station. They were beautiful and deadly, shaped like teardrops with weapon ports along their sides. He could see their scanning beams sweeping across the station. 10 seconds! Move! Jake shouted, "We need to go now!" The 3 men ran through the alien corridors as the download completed. Behind them, they could hear the sound of alien ships docking with the station. Heavy footsteps echoed through the halls. They reached their ship just as Ben's equipment finished copying the alien database. Lisa had the engines ready and the docking clamps released. The Liberty pulled away from the station and accelerated toward open space. 3 ships in pursuit, Lisa reported. They are faster than us, but not by much. Jake strapped himself into his chair as the ship shook under acceleration. Can we reach the quantum jump point? Maybe. It will be close. The alien ships opened fire with beams of green energy that lit up space around the Liberty. Lisa threw the ship into a wild spiral, dodging between the energy blasts, while Tony rerouted power to the shields. "Jump point in 30 seconds!" Lisa called. More energy beams flashed past the ship. One caught their rear shield and sent sparks flying from Tony's console. He worked frantically to keep the quantum drive online while the ship bucked and rolled. Under Lisa's piloting, jump point reached. Engaging quantum drive. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the USS Liberty vanished from the Kepler 442 system. Behind them, the 3 alien ships stopped their pursuit and turned back toward the station. On the bridge of the lead Zephyrian vessel, Commander Vextal stared at the spot where the human ship had disappeared. His 4 eyes were wide with shock and growing anger. "Impossible," he whispered. "The humans are supposed to be primitive." His second officer approached carefully. "Commander, what are your orders?" Vextal's expression hardened into cold fury. The humans had somehow developed faster than light travel without the Confederation knowing. They had infiltrated Zephyrian space and stolen classified information. Worse, they had made him look like a fool. "Set course for the human home system," Vextal ordered. "Full battle group. We end this threat before it spreads." "Sir, should we not report to the council first?" Vextal turned to face his officer, his eyes burning with rage. "The council will thank us when we prevent a galactic war. These humans have proven they cannot be trusted to develop responsibly. We will do what we have always done with dangerous species." The Zephyrian ships turned toward Earth, carrying death in their weapon bays and certainty in their hearts. They had no idea that their actions would doom their own empire and change the galaxy forever. The stars held no secrets from Commander Vextal. For 3,000 years, his people had ruled the galaxy with iron fists and cold logic. The Zephyrian Confederation stretched across 1,000,000 worlds, and in all that time, they had never found another race smart enough to challenge them. Vextal stood on the bridge of his ship, the dark wind, as it moved through space toward a small yellow star. His 4 eyes scanned the data screens while his long fingers tapped against the metal railing. This was just another routine mission. Find primitive worlds, mark them on the maps, make sure they stayed primitive. "Commander," called his second officer, a young Zephyrian named Keltra. "We are approaching the target system. Third planet shows signs of basic technology." Vextal walked to the main screen. The blue and green world spun slowly before him, covered in white clouds and brown landmasses. It looked peaceful, almost pretty. But Vextal had seen 1,000 worlds like this one. Nothing special about any of them. "What kind of technology?" he asked. "Radio signals, sir. Basic satellites. Some chemical rockets. Very primitive stuff." Keltra's voice carried the usual boredom of survey work. "They call themselves humans." Vextal nodded. This was normal. Young races always thought they were so clever when they first reached space. They had no idea how far behind they really were. The Zephyrians had been flying between stars when these humans were still living in caves. "Standard classification, then," Vextal ordered. "Mark them as developing world class 7. Monitor every 50 years. They might have something useful in 1,000 years or so." The crew went to work, placing sensor devices around the human solar system. The devices were invisible to human technology. They would watch and listen and report back to the Confederation. If the humans ever got too smart too fast, the Zephyrians would know. But Vextal was not worried. In 3,000 years of watching, no race had ever surprised them. Far below, on the blue world, Lieutenant Jake Morrison was having the worst day of his military career. He stood in the briefing room of the secret Colorado base, looking at a screen full of numbers and charts that made his head hurt. "This is impossible," Jake said for the 10th time. "We barely got to the moon 50 years ago. Now you want me to fly to another star?" General Paul Davis, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, pointed at the screen. "Not want, Lieutenant. Need. We detected alien probe signatures in our system 5 years ago. They think we are still throwing rocks at each other. We need to prove them wrong before they decide we are a threat." Jake rubbed his face with both hands. At 28 years old, he thought he would spend his career flying normal planes for normal missions. Instead, he was looking at blueprints for a ship that could break the laws of physics. "The USS Liberty is ready for testing," said Dr. Helen Park, the project's lead scientist. She was a small woman with black hair and thick glasses. "The quantum drive should get you to Kepler 442 and back in 6 weeks. "Should?" Jake asked. "Will," Dr. Park corrected quickly. "We'll get you there and back." Jake looked around the room at his new crew. Lisa Carter sat in the front row studying the ship's controls on her tablet. She was the best pilot Jake had ever seen, able to fly anything with wings or engines. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her blue eyes never left the technical manuals. Behind her sat Tony Rodriguez, the engineer who would keep their experimental ship running. Tony was built like a football player, with broad shoulders and hands that could fix anything. He had grown up working on cars with his father and somehow understood the new quantum technology better than the scientists who invented it. Ben Hayes, their communications officer, was the youngest of the group at 24. He had red hair and freckles and could speak 6 languages. More importantly, he could work with the new quantum communication systems that the aliens could not detect. "How long do we have to train?" Jake asked. 2 weeks, General Davis replied. "The next window for safe travel opens then. After that, we wait 6 months. 2 weeks to learn how to fly a spaceship," Lisa muttered. "No pressure." Dr. Park stood up and activated a holographic display of their target system. "Kepler 442 has shown signs of artificial structures. We need to know what they are and who built them. More importantly, we need to do it without being caught." Jake stared at the spinning hologram. His grandfather had fought in World War II. His father had served in Vietnam. Now Jake was being asked to fight a war that might start before anyone knew it had begun. "What if we find something we cannot handle?" Tony asked. "Then you run," General Davis said simply. "This is a reconnaissance mission only. No heroics, no contact with aliens. Get in, look around, get out." Over the next 2 weeks, Jake and his crew learned to operate technology that seemed like magic. The USS Liberty was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It looked like a sleek, black arrow, 300 feet long and covered in quantum field generators that could bend space around the ship. The first time they tested the quantum drive, Jake felt like his stomach had been turned inside out. 1 second they were orbiting Earth, the next they were near Mars. Lisa whooped with joy while Tony checked every system twice to make sure they had not broken anything. "This is incredible," Ben said, watching Earth shrink to a tiny blue dot on his screen. "We just traveled millions of miles in seconds." Dr. Park's voice came through the radio from Earth. "How do you feel, Liberty?" "Like we just rode lightning," Jake replied. "The ship is holding together, all systems green." They spent a week learning to fly the Liberty around their own solar system before General Davis cleared them for the real mission. The night before launch, Jake lay in his bunk and wondered if he would ever see Earth again. The next morning, they strapped themselves into their seats and prepared for humanity's first journey to another star. Jake looked at his crew and felt proud. Whatever they found out there, they would face it together. "All stations report ready," Lisa called out. "Quantum drive charged and ready," Tony announced. "Communications array active," Ben confirmed. Jake took a deep breath. "Engage quantum drive. Destination Kepler 442. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the USS Liberty disappeared from human space. Behind them, Earth continued spinning, peacefully, unaware that its children had just taken their first step into a much larger and more dangerous universe. In the dark between stars, Zephyrian sensors detected nothing. Their confidence remained unshaken. After all, primitive humans could never surprise the masters of the galaxy.